Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast. I am your host, Evan Shout. Got co-host Kristjan Hebert on today from Kelowna, I believe. And I got a special guest today with an interesting story or two that we're going to cover. But before I start, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. We do appreciate everybody watching. And if you do some subscription and stuff, it does help the algorithms get this out a little further. So without further ado, Mr. Ryley Richards, give us a little bit of your story of the farm, past, present, future, please.
Farm in Yellowgrass here in kind of south central Saskatchewan, South Regina. Farm with my dad. He started the farm in the early 80s. He actually ended up farming with my great uncle. He grew up in Melfort. Actually didn't grow up in Yellowgrass. I didn't grow up on the farm, but just kind of worked there as a kid. Started the farm here, kind of took it over and built it up. And I came home, I guess, worked on the farm as a kid, and then went to U of S in Saskatoon. Came back to the farm in 2004, and I guess just been rolling here since.
Good. Hebes, what are we doing in Kelowna this week? Everybody else is trying to spray, and you're on holiday.
Keyword being tried to spray. I don't think they've done much since I left.
We ain't spraying.
Yeah. No, it's a combination of business meetings and a hockey tournament. So did some John Deere stuff and met with a couple other farms that stay out here and did a hockey tournament while I was here.
Gotcha. Okay. Reason I wanted Ryley on is he's part of the Farmer Coach program with us, which I appreciate, but I also get to hear a few good stories. So I've got a few things I want to talk to you about, Ryley, that obviously you're a part of and we've heard a little bit of. And so I do want to go a bit down memory lane. So first session of Farmer Coach, we kind of had the guys stand up and give introductions of themselves and the farm and everything else. And yours, I'm going to say, was probably unforgettable, as well as a few of the guys, and I'll give a little context later, but have taken it to heart. So give us a little bit of a sense, because you stood up there and you said, you know what, my name's Ryley Richards, Yellowgrass Farm. And in the past, I've had some problems with alcohol and it led to this, and I've got my life on a different path now. So give us a bit of that context.
Yeah, sure. I guess same as any small town kid that grows up in Sask, that's the drinking world kind of revolves around. That's what we do. That's how we socialize. That's everything we do. And throughout my teens and everything else, I don't think it was any different than anybody else. I went pretty hard. In through university, I went really hard. Always thinking that, and I got out of control a lot. And as I got home and onto the farm, I was single till I was probably 28. And you get home, you start making some money, you got time on your hands. And my lifestyle was what you would think a small town Saskatchewan guy was. If somebody phoned me in North Battleford, I was there in the afternoon to go drinking. I was the guy that never said no to anything. If you wanted me somewhere, I was there. And I don't regret any of it. It's the reason I know half the people in the province is because I was there. I got around, I did those things. But the drinking started to leak into my life and I wasn't an everyday drinker, and when you view an alcoholic, in the back of your mind, you always think that's a brown bag living on the streets. But as I learned as you went along, it's every facet of life. It's lawyers, it's doctors, it's your buddy down the street. Hangovers weren't hangovers for me anymore. It was the anxiety, depression started to leak in. I always had people tell me that you're going to have kids, or when you get married, it's going to slow down. Well, I got married, it didn't slow down. And my marriage was suffering because of it. When you have kids, it's going to slow down. Well, for some of us that have the disease, it's just something that we can't get away from. There's a mental side of it, which convinces us that we're okay to have the next drink all the time. That's the insanity part of what that disease is my mind will always tell me that I'm okay and I'll handle it this time and I won't black out this time. And you try 1,000 different things to not let that happen, but you just don't know. And the physical part of the addiction is once you have that first drink, you've lost all control. You don't know if you're having one drink or you don't know if you're having 50. It's just, you don't have control of that. And that's really what came to head was just, my life had become unmanageable, and that's just really where it ended up.
Yeah, and I'd say like I'd probably agree with you. I mean, growing up small town, that there was. I mean, we all probably did it. I know I did it through my 20s. Same thing. It just never had the same effect creeping back in. And you know what? I don't have a reason why it didn't, because honestly, playing junior B hockey and doing all that stuff, I was in it probably almost as much as you were. It was just I just never got to that point, I guess is what you could say, or never realized it had gotten to that point. So, I would like to say that once you shared that, I mean, it opened the room up quite a bit. Guys definitely got a lot more comfortable. The other one is, I mean, as we know, there's 2 or 3 of them that throughout the term, you know, within 4 or 5 sessions now have literally said they haven't taken a drink in 6 months. And it wasn't because they thought they had a problem. It was that they feel better. They're doing better. Their life's better. They're spending more time with their kids. So first I want to thank you for bringing it up and doing what you're doing. Second, I've seen a couple of YouTubes just on province of Saskatchewan that you're doing some of the mental health stuff. So tell us a bit about how you got not pulled into that, but how you got approached for that.
Well, I guess the bottom line is, like, I tried quitting drinking for a long time. Like, there was a lot of bottoms, and not everybody's the same. Like, yeah, I wasn't on the streets. I hadn't lost my farm. My marriage wasn't over, but mentally I was spiritually and mentally broken. There was nothing left of me. I was completely discontented. I didn't care anymore. That's really what it boiled down to. And Rod Peterson was actually the one that helped me get going. He had on his social media when he came out with the Riders post there about how he had quit drinking, and I finally connected. And I never had connected to, I'm a small town guy. This was always my thing. I'm a small town guy. I don't know how I'm going to get away from this. It's our life. How do I ever change? And when he came out with his post, I read it, and he's from Milestone. He's from a couple miles down the road. And I'd met him before, actually in a bar drinking in Milestone. We'd drank together before. And I thought, you know what? That makes sense. Like, he did it. Like, how does he do this? And I contacted him, sent him an email on a Saturday night. I was completely broken. And I said, I don't know what to do. I had been to meetings before, and I just didn't get it. And he came out with his story, and I'm like, that's it. I need him. He got me going. And really, guys, when I do the things, anything that's public, or there's a lot of anonymity that's to our programs or this lifestyle, but I felt like I needed to see a small town local guy to really make a connection for myself. And that's what it is. You have to hear it from another alcoholic's mindset and what they went through, because that's really the only way you're going to understand it. And that in part is the reason that I took that approach of, okay, I'm going to put this out there because I think guys like me are out there, and I want guys to have an avenue out, because I know what it felt like to not be able to get out, and it was pure hell. It really was. So I guess the way that the Sask government thing came out, we were at SARM convention on the eve of the RM here in Scott, and Everett Hindley, they have their breakout sessions, and Everett Hindley was doing the mental health one, and I stood up and I said, guys, we don't see a rural face to any kind of advertisements you ever see with drug, alcohol, mental disorders, anything. You just don't see a rural face. And I said, there has to be a connection here. And he basically said, well, you're an ex-spokesperson. So I didn't do it for any kind of accolades. It's more of, there's a lot of guys like myself out there, guys or girls or whatever it is, that I just felt like the rural face had to be out there.
So I'm gonna pull us out of that one a little bit. I'm gonna go back to last year, Field of Stars event. We're bringing a crew of our clients in, and I said, well, I'm gonna call Ryley and see if he'll come. He says, your reply was, no, I'll be there. And then I looked at one of the invites, and your face is on the invite. So Give us a little bit of the Field of Stars. Obviously, you've taken a ride in the chopper, so I want a little bit of context on that one. I was there to listen to the story, but I like the story so much, I want to hear it again.
Oh yeah. Yeah, experiences I've had. I've had a few of them. Drank my whole life and never screwed up on a sled, but drank a lot of sled. But I've been sober 6 years ago, and this was 3 years ago, so I had nothing to do with drinking. But we were up sledding up at my cabin up in Madge, and it was cold. It was about minus 25 that day, and we went out with a group of Dad's buddies that I ride with all the time. And what ended up happening, a guy got stuck ahead of me. We were in the bush, went to go pull him out, went to go start my sled again, jumped on it, kind of off balance, just to get the sled moving, bumped throttle a few times. Throttle froze wide open. She catwalked, and I was off balance. By the time I was able to put it down and able to jump off the sled, because I knew I was careening right for a tree, I jumped into the tree, and next thing I know, I'm laying on my back, kind of half upside down. I know I'm in a lot of pain, and by the time I was able to pull my helmet off and look above my chest, my tree was in my hip, and my sled was at a 90 across the tree, and my femur was broke, my foot was pointing in some direction that wasn't possible, and my wrist was smashed into about 1,000 pieces. So out in the middle of the bush, it was minus 20. The guys I was with really had to spring into action, built a fire around me. And I said this in my speech, and they were ahead of me. I always ride at the back. It gives me more time to play, and I always do head counts. And riding in the back, they didn't know I was hurt, so I laid there for 2 or 3 minutes on my own. And this is the one thing about stars, guys. When you are hurt or someone you know is hurt, as I was laying there on my back in an incredible amount of pain, I was starting to get worked up, the anxiety was starting to build. How the hell am I going to get out of here? And the one thing that I was looking up through the trees into the sky, and I thought, you know what, stars can come and get me. And that was the one thing that kept me calm through that whole thing.
No, and I think we support stars, and I think everybody, or at least most rural communities, should be supporting stars because the work they do. How long to get there from start to finish? Like, how long were you in the trees before they picked you up?
So I hit the tree right at noon, and it was a long story. So we're all in the middle of the bush. Stars I was on the Manitoba border, so we were close to Roblin. So Stars wasn't exactly right there. It took about an hour for the paramedics. My buddies rode out to the highway, rode the paramedics back to me. That took about an hour and a half to get them to me. Just stars aligned. The Roblin Fire Department had just got a side-by-side on tracks, so they actually drove out to me. They loaded me on a spine board into the back of the side-by-side and drove me out to the highway to Roblin. And then stars actually flew from Regina to Roblin, or came from Saskatchewan all the way to Roblin, and flew me from Roblin back to Regina. So crashed at noon. I didn't land in Regina till about 7:00 that night. So it was a pretty long ordeal.
No meds out in the bush is what we're saying.
But you got to remember, this was right in COVID. We weren't even supposed to be in Manitoba at this time. So I thought, well, we were in the mountains. So they could have shipped me right to Winnipeg, and no one would have been able to come see me. Yeah. And lucky enough, Saskatchewan came and got me, and they had to refuel the helicopter in Roblin to fly me back. It was an hour and a half flight. So I think we've donated to Stars for the last 3 years pretty heavily, and I'll continue on because I'm pretty sure I still owe.
Okay, I want to pull us back into farming a little bit, but thanks for sharing the stories, Ryley. That's part of why I wanted to have you on. But the other reason I want to have you on is we're going to talk a little bit of farm investing today, because we can knock down production efficiencies, all that stuff, and we can kill that 7 different ways. But I know both of you are part of the Ag Tech, the Cultivator program. So I kind of wanted to pick both your brains on A, why you're part of the program, and B, what do you see the fit, I guess, whether it's to your operation or just to some belief you have in Ag Tech investment, but give me a bit of a roundabout why you joined. And Hebes, I'll let you start.
Yeah, mine goes back to a mentor of mine was kind of chairman of an advisory group for Granular down in San Francisco when it first got going, and asked me if I'd sit on the advisory committee. Kind of me being a typical farmer said, what are some kids in San Francisco going to teach me about agriculture? And went down there with that attitude. And 3 days later, after being locked in a fully glass-walled boardroom, I've never been more exhausted in my life, because they basically taught me that business is business and smart people can help, right? It doesn't matter if you're growing durum or lentils or canola or widgets or anything. If we're just in the manufacturing business is really what we're in, and we have Mother Nature that can affect it, but you know what? So does a guy that owns resorts in Mexico. And so you're just trying to find like-minded people that are trying to find solutions. And it taught me, one of the coolest things was that when I was down there was we were just at the time kind of implementing 24-hour shifts. And I walked into the office at 8 a.m. and they're all huddled around this projector. And I go over there, and here's a mimic team, exactly the same amount of people in Romania, because it was the opposite time zone. And they were doing their handoff at 8 a.m. so that they could code 24 hours a day, and nobody in the world knew any better. And nobody was working nights, and they just coded 24 hours a day. And I was like, sometimes you're just looking for a different way to solve the problem. But that's really what got my head around it, is ag tech and technology was one way to get some very smart people looking at the world of agriculture that weren't specifically farmers, and that we needed to change our minds to help kind of guide them to what are the specific problems or projects in agriculture that we want these smart kind of technology programmer minds to work on. Because I agree, I'm probably not going to bring them to my farm, and they're not going to fix the operation standpoint as a total. That's not their specialty. Their specialty is specific projects that technology can fit. And so that's kind of why I got involved with the cultivator and with Amertech, is that, good ideas are going to come from everywhere in the world, not just from Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan and Western Canada are just where good ideas should probably be implemented when it comes to broadacre agriculture. So how do we encourage those good ideas to end up here, whether they're born here or they're born in Australia or born in Africa? We want them to be coming to Saskatchewan to get tried and tested on the farms here. And because if they can help make us more productive, make net farm income go up, make our lives better, that's what we want for the future ag.
Yep. Ryley?
I guess it kind of started 2 or 3 years ago. I actually talked to Dean Klippenstein, and I grabbed a few of us locally, and I said, guys, part of it is my team has come so far that I've gotten to the place where I've got some more time now. I'm not on equipment all the time anymore. And I piqued my outside interest. I was watching what you and Hebes were doing with Amertech and some different things there. And it really piqued my interest. Kind of the same thing, just you see robotics, AI, and just where things are going, how fast things are changing on the farm. And I thought, well, as far as an investment portfolio, let's just get outside of what's happening here. And obviously things have been good. So there's a little extra working capital. So there's a little more freedom to do these things. And yeah, just signed up with the cultivator program just to try it out. And it's just putting yourself out there, just meeting people, just kind of starting to understand the world a little bit. And any investments I've done is just, I'm investing in people myself. I try and follow guys that have had success or guys that are really involved in the industry, like what Kristjan's doing. There's some guys that I've met through the programs, and there was no cost to it. It was just a sign up, and just kind of got the ball rolling, and has opened some doors that I've really appreciated and have learned.
Yeah. Well, I think the same was for me. For me, it was the networking. I'm meeting people not only in the ag industry, but in the tech industry, which is something new. I tend to think I know a lot of people, but then once you get to an event like that, it opens a whole spectrum of new ideas, new concepts, and just new ways of thinking about stuff. So for me, that was the big one. And don't get me wrong, I love investing Kristjan's money. That always makes me happy, but I definitely get a lot out of the networking side of it. That to me is probably the best. So for farms that have never done, outside investment, outside of land, outside of the farm itself is kind of a foreign concept, I think, on most operations. So why look outside the farm, which I think you've answered a little bit of it, but B, how do you get that mindset of actually moving money away from your own business, your own operation that you have full control over, and trusting another operation or another entity such as an investment to spend your money wisely?
I think there's a few key points is what are you trying to invest in, right? So, we always look at obviously investing in land and investing in the operation itself. But it's also why we track some of the data to make sure we don't overinvest, in extra equipment or extra this or extra that. And then we've created other buckets that we think are important to invest in. One is we think it's important to invest in education for both ourselves and our crew. Well, that would include networking, right? We think it's important to invest in things that we believe the world and the industry is headed towards, because I don't know, it probably fell back to one of my crutches, right, Evan, is that if I don't have some money invested in it, I just don't care. Like, I got too much to read already in a week. And so I'm just not going to pick up, a paper on lithium and sit down all Saturday morning and read it to try and understand it better. But if I got some money invested in a lithium company, magically, I'm reading reports from the shareholders and from the CEO, and I pick up an article, you see it in the Economist on lithium, and it perks my interest because I've got a bit of money invested. And so we try to focus on those pieces. And I think, going back to Ryley's first stories, and this is the other thing I find about the like this kind of venture cap investment or private equity investment in the tech world in general, is it's a pretty positive networking group, in that everybody's pretty excited to try and help everybody else be successful. They're not like, God, your idea sucks, you should just quit, right? They're trying, maybe pivot or try this or try that. And that's not always the case in agriculture, right? And I would assume, Ryley, I would assume that's not always the case, when you're speaking about mental health, etc. Some people are very positive about it, and some are like, oh, that's just not for me. No, it's for the whole world. It's just a different way that everybody deals with it and approaches for it. But I always joke on stage that the reason Tim Hortons so successful in Canada is because it was where farmers could go bitch about each other and hope who fails next and come up with who's got Chinese investors or the mob, because it'd be horrible if they just actually have done pretty well and reinvested in themselves and do it different than we do. And I think that's also something that maybe attracts me personally, and I'm assuming you too, to the tech and the private equity world. Is it's a pretty positive world.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you touched on it. Everybody's moving forward. No one's, and if there's success, it's celebrated. And sometimes there are small successes on these small startups, and sometimes they fail, and that's fine. But it is all positive attitude, and that's a big player for me. Is just I'm networking now with people that are just moving forward all the time, a different mindset, and it's really opened my thought process a lot. And it comes back to you guys preach the who's of the who's. I have a marketing guy, I have an agronomist, I have all these guys on my team, and do they make the decision at the end of the day? No, but they get me out of my lane and make me think about it. And that's a lot of what goes on with this side of the industry. Is I want to see what's coming, I want to think about it, and maybe I don't want to have it on my farm, but maybe I want to own a piece of it. It's just another way to be a guinea pig.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned, Ryley, you changed the structure a little bit on the farm to get you some time, and whether that's time away from the farm or time with family or whatever that might entail. But I know, obviously, knowing your operation a little bit, you're moving into that COO role and trying to get up an individual in that position, A, to have a little bit of company in the boardroom with you, but B, also to structure some of your time. So give me a quick indication of how you feel it's going without outing yourself too much, but how's the whole journey been, and bringing somebody else in to take over some of those tasks off your plate, essentially?
For sure. Big thing for me, and I've seen it for a long time. I had my kids a lot later in life than my dad did. I was off in university by the time he was my age, and I've got a 7-year-old. So there's going to be a pretty big gap here where I'm not going to be able to run this place on my own. And I've seen that for a long time. And Josh Brock is one guy that is kind of setting him up as our COO. Got him in, he was 19 years old. He was running a crew for Site Energy when he was 18. So this guy had all the things aligned that worked really well. And over the past 6 years, he has grown immensely. We've actually got him in Farmer Coach, which has opened a lot of thought processes for him. And I just see that he's starting to run the crew better than I even did. And now I'm starting to get in the way more than I'm a help. So a lot of the time I'm trying to open his doors where this is going to be his crew to run the operations. He's not there yet, but he has come a long, long way. And there's certain times of the year where I do the office, and my office role compared to what my dad ever seen is completely different. I pretty much live in here, and I'm glad I can, because I'm learning the business more, being able to put my time in here and not in a seat.
And Kristjan, I mean, you've told the story. You brought Jeff on at 7,000 acres, which probably at that point wasn't the right size. But give me that breakdown of why you originally thought you needed him, and then obviously what he's done since we've grown from that point forward.
Yeah, it was funny because Jeff actually found the old sheet. I think we were maybe having a couple beer at the Mooseman Lake and filled out a piece of loose leaf of what we hoped the farm looked like in 10 years after he started. And we were going to take it from 7 to 16,000, because I've been quoted a number of times that I always thought 8,000 acres was about the right pod size in southeast Saskatchewan. So there's going to be 2 of us. That's how big we had to be. And we just had the math kind of figured out. And Jeff's been here for 7, and it's a little different than that. But my big thing is I could tell with the opportunities coming that the people side was starting to irk me. And what I would say is some of the drama text messages, the one you'd get that it's a Wednesday and it's been a long week already. Like, what are you telling me this for? I've been here with you, right? And I'm not getting paid till I sell the grain. And it was a fair question, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to deal with, right? And then some of the direction that the crew wanted, once again, fair questions, but I felt that I was too busy doing other things to really spend a bunch of time on that. And Jeff came out of the world of 100 people underneath him all in a union, and so coming to a crew where he had like a red and green light to just hire and fire at his basically will. Obviously, we still had to do it right, but it was nothing like having to deal with the union. Was really good for him. So that was the big thing. Was one, I've always said, if you find great people, just hire them and find a way to make it work. 2, he had the skill sets that I felt was weak in myself, right? That we needed to become a lot more professional at. And then 3, I specifically wanted to be able to have him at my side before kind of maybe we technically needed him on paper, because I didn't feel it was correct in a fast-paced farm that you're learning how to be the COO and learning the farm at the same time. And so it's kind of the same story as Ryley, right? You're on a 5 or 6 year journey. It probably takes 7 or 8, but they're learning kind of the ditches, right? One of my mentors always says that our job as the leader is just show them where the ditch is and make sure they're deep, right? So don't cross the ditch. And if you do cross it, you better phone me right away. And as long as they understand those ditches, then our job is just to get the rocks out of the way on the road and tell them to go as fast as they can. And so they could learn those ditches at the same time of learning kind of what speed they could drive down that road of the farm.
So in an industry where we've heard it a few thousand times on Succession that giving up control is one of the hardest things to do. And obviously I had the podcast with Dallas, and that was one of our conversations, was that he wasn't willing or ready to do that. So give me an idea of what it feels like giving up control, and how you're managing that without staying up and being stressed all night. If you are.
I think it just takes time. The little bit you do it, you realize that, and I have to applaud my team, and that comes right from what Rod taught me, is he took time to get me going. It took time for him to give up control, and once you experience that, they're setting out there, and our crew is amazing. They've just bought into, this is their place. We want to succeed. And as you step back and give them more control and empower them more, they solve their problems, and you just have to give them the space to do that. And yeah, it's a little tough. I don't run much for equipment anymore, but I think that it's going to come back full circle as Josh starts to run more. I may end up back in equipment, because that's just the way the cycle will go, and that's fine. And I love logistics. I love being a yard guy. That's just kind of the way my brain works. So I'm probably in the best spot for myself most of the time as it is anyway.
Kristjan?
Yeah, I think that in the end, part of the reason we love farming is we're addicted to business, right? And solving problems, and obviously those solving problems hopefully lead to making money. But one of the problems we have is that as we grow, if we want to be the one that solves all of the problems, we got to look in the mirror and say, is this because I think I'm the best at all these problems, or is it that I have an ego problem, right? And once you get over that, you start delegating. That what you find is that your number one thing is to hire the right people that fit with how you want things done, and in general, you're just picking that their mentality is right for you and their skill set is way better than yours. And so that way you can get through the problems and conflict that you have with each other. You get through that, and their skill set's actually better at doing most of the jobs you're delegating to them anyway. So I'm kind of the same as Ryley. Like, you delegate it, you got to realize that it worked really well. Probably, to be honest, even better than if you were there. So then it's hard to get back involved. And most of the time, the lack of ability to delegate or let go, to me, is tied to two things. One, your own ego as a leader, or two, your inability to find the right person. Right? Like, if you hire the wrong who and then delegate to him, that's a disaster. So those two things is, if you can find the right person, one, and then two, you kind of just gotta, let your ego go. No different than our dads did with us, and things just start to happen. To be honest, better than we could do them. And I mean, Evan, you saw this year. I mean, my big thing was I kind of always ran a drill. It was one of my favorite things to do. It was part of life. Everything else, I was in the office more, and even this year, we had a lot of great operators the way it worked out. So I think I maybe ran a drill for like 1,000 acres. I don't even know if I got to 1,000 acres. And the first day and a half or 2 days was like, you kind of feel left out. And then after that, you find all the other problems that you can go solve that are slowing the team down. And you end up, I don't know, I'm to the point I get more excitement out of watching the team be successful and solving problems that allow them to kind of catapult their success than I do of necessarily running a piece of equipment or doing something specific. It's more like, hey, which problem can let you guys go faster? And that's the one I'll go tackle. And I probably realized that that's what I enjoy doing more than, what we'd call typical farming or running equipment. Just find out what you really like doing.
Yeah. And I think the big one for me, and I'm pretty open to saying this, is that I was afraid of a loss of purpose. So for me, it was, I knew what I was good at. It was the financial side. It was creating the projections. It was that side of agriculture that I'd always been trained in. And so I didn't want to let it go, because if I let it go, I'm not a quick start on the Colby by any means. I wasn't actually sure what was I working myself out of a job. And by the time I'd finally realized that my team was better at it than I was, and my perfectionism probably slowed us down quite a bit, but B, it allowed me to focus on things. And it wasn't that I had to come up with the ideas, because obviously I've got a great leadership crew here and partners that come up with great ideas, and we get lots of opportunities, but it was just, I had different places to start implementing. So I could still do the same skill set, just in a whole bunch of different areas rather than being focused on one thing. So, okay.
Just back to the empowering the crew thing. We had a little bit of a mishap day one this year on the farm. My dad, apparently we're femur breakers. He first day, he wasn't even supposed to be at the farm. He was moving from his house into an apartment, and he came out middle of the afternoon, and I told him to get on the drill. I got the drill going. It was supposed to be his drill. I said, get on the drill. No, I don't. You run it for a day. We had to learn a new drill. Anyway, goes to help the guys load in the yard, falls on the top of the drill and ends up breaking his femur. So that was an interesting day. So he's actually laying on top of the drill when his femur's broke. He's, I just moved into an apartment with like an elevator. I said, well, yeah, you did actually. But empowering the crew. So we were down to a roadblock. We had 4 guys. We were going to run 2 drills with 4 guys, and those guys just took over and did it. I didn't hop on a drill. Scott and my one other guy hopped on a drill, and these guys rolled like I've never seen guys do. We still hit our 12 or 11 or I think we were around 12 days seeding window that we wanted to hit, and we nailed it. Ended up getting a young guy in to do some spraying for me, which kept the drills going. Just, you got to empower the crew, and they got to know they can do it, and they wanted to. When they see Rod was hurt, they wanted to do it. They felt like they were going to do this for him, for me, whatever, for us together. They just did it.
Before I go too far, you guys okay staying on a little bit later today? I got a few questions that we wanted to cover here. Is that good?
Yep.
We had a couple DMs with questions that I wanted to at least throw out to you, Kristjan. So first one, so they wanted a little bit of clarification on, vision and goals. So obviously most farms are working in a family operation, father, son, father, daughter, mother, son, husband, wife. What happens when some of the family members don't actually have goals and you're trying to get this whole business setup of aligning vision and goals and all that other stuff?
Yeah. I mean, depends on who you ask the question of, Evan. But if you were to ask Evan this question, he'd just say that there's days that Kristjan's just an asshole. But my definition of that is just too honest for the general public, right? You really have to have the conversation and separate the hats, right? Like it's a unique thing in a family business. I don't care if it's a farm or a car dealership or a tire shop. If you're part of the family, you probably have a team member or an employee hat. You might have a management hat, depending on where you're at, and then you probably have a shareholder hat. And in most cases, there's a lot of opinions that come from the team members and the shareholders that really should just be a management opinion, right? The CEO, COO, leadership team is who is determining where this company is going. Technically, they're going to get that approved by the board of directors, but that is probably them and their parents or one parent or however that works. But in a lot of cases, you might have a spouse or a brother or a sister or a nephew that's a team member that thinks they get to have an opinion at the management level, or you may have shareholders, retiring parents, uncles, aunts, that also feel like they get to have an opinion at the management level. But the problem is it is just an opinion. It's not a decision. It's not a vote. The management team has to decide where the operation is going and design the vision and mission and goals so that everybody will follow that. It leads that you have to have some of those hard or awkward conversations. But I mean, coming from somebody that's had to do it, after you do 2 or 3 of them, the awkwardness kind of goes away, because if you believe in your vision and why you're doing it, and your team believes in it, like whether you're a family member or not, you have to buy into that. Because that the business itself, like we said, it's kind of like a game. It's like a sport, and you have to have that culture and that vision for them to follow. And if they won't, but say you're 4 or 5 people on your team, or you're 10, 11 people on your team all do buy into it, just because we have the same last name or grew up in the same house doesn't necessarily mean that can veto it all and throw the whole culture off kilter. So, I mean, you 100% have to have buy-in. And yes, you're going to deal with family members slightly different. But I mean, speaking from our own kind of results, is that if you can get him on board, it's dynamite, because probably no different than Ryley just told the story about his dad. His dad's obviously on board with the culture, and the team sees his dad get hurt, and they're like, oh, he won't be around for seeding, thank God. No, they're like, God damn, we're going to do this for Rod, right? Because it helps just dynamite and steroid that culture when you can get the family members on board with it too. But at the same time, you can't let the family members veto and overrule the team members, because on the farm itself, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if you're a Hebert and Jeff doesn't have my last name, Evan doesn't have my last name, neither does 15 people in my crew. Everybody's important. It doesn't matter if you have my last name or somebody else's. You're all important to the crew, and everybody's opinion counts in that. And it's just sometimes that takes some awkward conversations for everybody to buy into.
Anything you want to add on that, Ryley?
No, that's good.
Okay. Reasons to grow in this environment. So Ryley, I'm going to let you start this one. Why are we even looking for more acres or diversification? Why not just stay complacent?
Well, it's not that if you don't grow, you die, but look back in time, guys, it's just, you have to keep the ball rolling or the ball stops. And I guess opportunities don't come along every day. And that's kind of why this outside investment thing has come along. Is A, it's an succession play. If I can make some of it work, it's an offset. And B, yeah, when opportunities come, think we're still poised and egg to have some skin in the game here. So it's when the opportunities are there, jump on them, and when they're not, find other ways or get better at what you're doing.
Hebes?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I'm a big believer that too much cash in your operation makes you lazy, right? So whether that's buying land or improving your operation or investing outside of the farm, or there's so many different ways that you can grow, right? I think too many people just assume when we talk about growth that it has to be acres. No, like we've seen lots of people with outside investments in industries that have nothing to do with agriculture, whether that be in energy or in critical minerals, etc. Franchises. We've seen guys have vineyards that then end up doing holding contracts for some of the multinationals, right? Some guys start retails. Like there's 100 different ways. It's not all just in acres, but it all ends up down kind of to the bottom line and growing. I think secondly is that, we have this, the world has this theory that old MacDonald is what farmers should be for the rest of their life. And kind of my argument with that is, okay, fine, but if you're going to force us into that theory, then why didn't you force everybody we have to buy from into that theory? Because the fertilizer companies, the grain companies, the equipment dealers, none of them listened. There's no mom and pop shops left. And so part of the growth, to be honest, is to ensure that we can compete and have some clout when we're having negotiations, because if you can save 1 or 2% on machinery or pick up 25 or 50 cents when you're selling your grain or save a couple points on our inputs, I mean, all of those deals, relate directly to our bottom line and significantly. It's a direct increase in profit because we have to use them. So everywhere where we can save 1% goes directly to profit. And so I believe it's just part of agriculture being successful. And now I completely see some small niche enterprises being super successful too, because they can get higher margins on what they sell. Whether that be, you look at the fruit and veggie guys, they don't have big acres, but they have big profit because they have huge margins and a different, set of rules to play by than us. And yeah, so those would kind of be my 2 points. Is one, I think you got to strip cash out of opcos for a couple of reasons, but one is it can kind of create lazy management, and then two, I just believe that in order to compete in the world we're in globally and with the suppliers and customers we deal with, we have to.
Okay. Before I let you two go, I saw a game on a podcast the other day, so I want to play a little game with you.
Oh boy.
So I'm gonna say 5 different words, and I want you to say overrated or underrated in agriculture. Okay? And you can give some context to why you said it, but first thing that comes to your mind. So let's start. The word sustainability.
Overrated.
Explain.
We are in this business to be sustainable. That we take care of the land, we soil test, we understand what we're doing. I want my land to improve every year. I want the environment to improve every year. I don't think there's an argument that we are not sustainable. We are. If we're not being sustainable, we wouldn't be here. Bottom line.
Hebes.
Yeah, I mean, I say overrated too, right? It pisses me off some of the words that have been stolen by the world and by marketing companies. It also pisses me off how bad at marketing we are in agriculture, right? Like some of the words we use, herbicide and pesticide, and we wonder why people think they're bad. Like I see a skull and crossbones when I hear those words. But when it comes to sustainability, I'm the same as Ryley. I mean, we got a statement that hangs on the wall and says we're going to leave the land, financial statements, community, and the industry in a better state each generation that runs the farm. And I mean, I don't know that there's a better definition of sustainability. And I always just say, like, you want us to go green, it's really tough to do if we're in the red. So that's what worries me when the government has kind of hijacked the word sustainability. Is it just screams policy and red flags, and it's the fact that the policy and red flags weren't too stringent that zero-till was created in Saskatchewan, that we soil test more acres than anywhere in the world, and yet sure seems currently that federally we don't even want to tell the world that Saskatchewan, Western Canada grows the lowest carbon emission crops in the globe.
I'm with you too. I'm overrated, and more or less because they hijack the word. I mean, sustainability can mean anything we want it to. We can be sustainable on the financial side. We can be sustainable on the environment side, agronomy. I mean, it is a word that they found they could really media jump on and use. But to me, sustainability is not just environment. And then that's what they've made it out to. And it's their curse word. And that's where we've gone down. And I mean, it's been a significant amount of time allocated to it in the last year, 2 years. And I don't think we've changed anything. So for me, that highly overrated.
Oh yeah.
Okay. 800 horsepower tractor.
Overrated, but can be geographically where you are.
Cop out.
Cop out.
Hebes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently overrated is the words I'm going to go with. I think, but I mean, kind of the same as Ryley. When I was 15 years old or 12, I sure probably didn't think we'd be running 80-foot drills up and down the field. But at that time, I mean, we were still just getting onto light bars, and all 80-foot drills would have meant is 25 feet of overlap. And now most farms have at least 60, if not 80 feet drills running 79 plus feet up and down the field. So as the mechanical engineers figured out how to have 100 plus drills at whatever spacing guys believe is the right spacing for the area, whether that be 10 or 12 inch and can deal with the drag, I got a sneaking suspicion you're going to see a few of them kicking around.
Farm advisory boards.
I would say underrated, probably just on the fact that I don't think enough guys are using them. And that whole networking and getting out of your own space, I think, is the biggest reward you get out of them.
Yeah, same. Underrated completely. I think there's a lot of ideas that are already general practice in the world of specifically small business. I mean, we're not talking public companies, board of directors, where you're going to pay a whole bunch of money and have all these policies. No, small business has a lot of advisory boards. And it's exactly what Roddy said. It's one for idea generation, and two, it's to share networks with each other, and three, I believe it ties back into the mental health of small business owners and founders. It's a lonely game in a lot of cases, because the reason we're running the operations is because we solve problems. And so if you're a problem solver for everybody around you, whether that be your family and your whole crew, who solves your problems? You, right? And so just having a group of people where, even when Evan told me the first story, of the Farmer Coach Day, when you told your story, Ryley, I mean, there's a group of people in there that took it to heart, and because you in a way, there's a bunch of you that are all the same, no different than we're the same. So it's a safe place to talk about something on the farm, something in your business, something in your family, or something personally, and just have some people spitball some ideas at you that'll tweak a new way to solve the problem.
Yeah, and I'm underrated on that one as well, just because I don't have enough farms that have them. I mean, if we actually do the percentages that actually utilize advisory boards to their full extent, it's nominal. My last one, and that's because Ryley stood us up last week. So the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, we were supposed to do this last week, but I had an opportunity to take the kids to a game in Edmonton. And I thought, you're going to have to wait on me, boys, because I'm going.
Yeah.
I want overrated, underrated. Oh, now you shy away. So we can.
Let's go on underrated, because they're going to pull it off. McDavid's going to run them right through.
I'm going to pull a half cop out. I think their forward group is just rated. Everybody knows how good they are and how good they can be. I think their forward group's ability to play defensive and block shots is maybe a little underrated. We saw that in the last couple of games of the last series. You saw guys like Draisaitl laying down in front of shots. And then, even though their defense right now is getting ate alive by the media, I mean, I'm going to go with underrated. I mean, they just won a game and they only had 10 shots on net. And yes, I know they gave up 35 or 36, and everybody wants to give credit to the goalie, but you kind of go roll back through that tape. there wasn't a lot of scoring chances in those shots. They were kept to the outside. There was a ton of shots blocked. And so I think because their forward group is so good, their defense gets a little underrated. And sometimes, underrated guys work a little harder, which should help in the final.
Outshot 4-1, highly overrated. That's where I'm going, and I'll leave it at that. So
that's funny.
That's a typical Washington Capitals fan. Right? If you like Ovechkin, that's all you focus on.
All right. Thank you, Ryley, for jumping on with us this morning, and thanks, Chris, for jumping in from Kelowna. And again,
can I take 2 seconds, guys?
You betcha.
Okay. Last week or 2 weeks ago, you had Dallas on, and he had one quote that I got to go back to. So success is on the other side of fear, guys. As a recovering alcoholic, I lived in a world of fear. I had no self-confidence. I had built myself up to be this guy that never said no. I was scared of what my life was going to look like when I couldn't be part of these things. Just know that if anybody wants to reach out to somebody. You're going to need to talk to another person that's struggling with the same thing. And believe me, success is on the other side of fear, because fear isn't gone from my life. It's still there. But believe me, it is very subsided to what it was. I have self-confidence. My marriage is back. I have never heard a negative thing from anyone in my community, only support, and in the ag community. It's been absolutely amazing. There is a lot of success on the other side. You will get your life back. You will get time back. Reach out, talk to somebody. Believe me, your world will change, and change for the better. And you're never excluded from anything. I can still do everything that I ever used to. I just do it a little different.
Love it. Thank you for adding that. And remember, that's the truth about ag.